You folks with the memes on this one. Wife leaves wood-handled chef knife soaking in the sink overnight. When you forget to feed your sourdough for days. I don't think that's happening because most people who are really pushing the sourdough at home are just home all the time. When you mise 3/4 of the recipe but realize you're missing the main ingredient. My favorite, when someone turns off your timer without telling you, that sucks. And then there's just funny ones because I definitely can tell that these are things that have happened to you in the past and this was your reaction. When you misunderstand rough chop for real fine chop on a 10-pound onion box. When you wake up at 3 a.m. realizing you missed the 10 p.m. deadline to call in produce the night before. When the new guy drops the halibut on the floor. When you go in the walk-in and remember you never got your pen back from your sous chef. I always appreciate you folks being real with me. Do this. What's up folks, Justin Khanna here, back with another AskJK. It's been a few months since we've done one of these, but I did do a post on my YouTube community tab, and here's some answers to the questions that you folks asked. Sean asks about how I'm going to change my food preparation on events going forward, given the current circumstances. For example, communicating safety and clean food measures, staff and my well-being, as well as giving clients peace of mind and confidence when choosing us. We've discussed this a lot internally, and I think the environment is still shifting and we don't 100% know what the societal and cultural norms are going to be going forward. Things we've talked about though are like doing plated services as opposed to family style presentations, because I think the act of passing plates around a table is going to be a little bit shady. We do a presentation called a grazing table where you're free to come up to a table and use tongs to take things off and put them onto a plate that is yours. I don't know how well that's going to be received. Even down to things of like, if we're seating people at tables, what is going to be the new norm for how close people want to be seated to each other? We're kind of doing this combo of looking to people who are smarter than us and who are executing things at scales that are more public, and we're going to see how people respond to that, take some inspiration from there, as well as just kind of like lean into what our clients need and just keeping comms with them. Because that way we get a feel for how we can best support their guests and in turn them. I think the biggest thing we're doing going forward, and we're working with a lot of other vendors on this too, is to make sure that our contracts are updated to prevent anything. Because like if you see a surge in what's happening come back again in the fall, for example, this all came on so fast, and I think we need to just all be able to protect ourselves contractually in case things have to get canceled or postponed. AD has a ton of questions. Let's see what we got here. Do I have a fear of people tasting my food when I first started getting into cooking? If so, how did I get over the self-doubt? I've semi-talked about this before, but I think the biggest issue I had when I was cooking early on for people who were not my restaurant homies was like trying to flex too hard on technique to people who didn't really understand the technique, right? Like doing sous vide on something to someone who doesn't really understand the difference between a sous vide steak and a steak that you just sear in the pan. I think a common thing that people do is they kind of go back to the classics when they want to cook food for other people because it's tried and true and people know kind of what to expect when you say croque madame or tuna niçoise. The big unlock for me early on in my career in cooking food for other people was learning how to use salt and learning how to use acid. I've talked about this before. I think now the thing that caused me the most self-doubt is using spices, especially like more complex blends. I will get doubtful of myself and then I will just understand that I know how these flavors work, and then as they get presented, it might be a little bit different than the normal, but because I have this strong foundation of knowing how flavors work, things more or less play out. What makes a good leader versus a bad leader? I think the thought exercise that leaders should try to employ if they think that they are a bad leader is flip the script of, what if your employees or the people that you manage, you work for them instead of them working for you? And how does that change how you operate in the tasks that you prioritize? How do you choose a theme for a pop-up dinner? I've talked about this a lot in the realm of having a concept, and that makes sure that you don't get pulled in too many different directions with your creativity. And I think that that can be incredibly valuable for making sure that your menu and everything that you're executing feels tight and not scattered. Now that being said, I think that people get twisted and think that you have to be exploring ancient cuisines of Oaxaca or doing modern Scandinavian seafood. When in reality, the concept itself could just be, I'm excited about cooking this, and this is the menu that I'm excited about doing. And that can be a concept, right? And then in turn, you're making it super unique because no one else is gonna choose those dishes because it's coming from you and your desire, your inspiration to cook these dishes. So it's truly the most unique concept you could have. Leading into the next question, how do you make sure the dishes on a set menu complement each other? I think about it like other things that have to flow, right? Not every song on an album can be like 180 beats per minute with the snare drum going. You know what I mean? Like there has to be this flow of like, maybe this song doesn't have any drums in it and it's 100% piano. That's how an album flows, because you can compare one song to the next song, and then it, you know, obviously there's different things with like going from light to heavy and then back down into Sweetland, but that's like, that can completely be flipped. If you saw my video on Tarzani Jane, or even talking about Bray, he served an ice cream dish like 6 courses into the 10-course menu. So I think sometimes it's less about complimenting and making sure that it can continue to be exciting throughout the entire menu. Question from Chris: what was the first piece of professional equipment I got? If I had to guess, and this is a broken tool now, it was like the Mac white ceramic honing rod. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever, because I was being more respectful towards my knives than everybody else who was using like the diamond steel that was included in our chef kits. To indulge the gearheads though, I will talk about 2 that were pretty important to me. This one is a spoon that I got while I was at Per Se. It's kind of dirty actually. It was, why is there dust on it? It was a collaboration spoon, I think, between 11 Madison Park and Alinea when they did their dinner. And this isn't even a special spoon. It's from Villeroy and Bach. It's just like an 1810. It's stainless steel. It's not even silver. But for whatever reason, it was like they had a bunch of extra spoons from this collaboration dinner. And it was the first spoon that I had that was like a nice shape for a quenelle. And this isn't even as nice as like a Lady Hamilton. But I just remember being in the Comey kitchenette Per Se, and someone came by and gave this to me in a plastic bag. And this was like, I thought I was legit because I had a nice spoon finally. And then the one that I've talked about before, this was like the first nice knife that I got for myself. This is my Misono UX10. I've talked about this a ton on the channel before. It's like almost getting to a point where it's going to be a slicer. I really look forward to that day where I have to kind of redo the bevel on this entire knife. But no, this one has served me incredibly well. I've taken super good care of this. This has been around the world with me. Yeah, I fell in love with this knife the first moment that I picked it up and held it, and we've been through a lot together, and I think that this is like, I can distinctly remember this being my first nice knife purchase on my own. Cameron asks, what's the best advice for someone wanting to go to culinary school such as LCB? What's a good thing to focus on? This is a great opportunity to answer this question because I've been getting kind of inquiries like this a lot as people are planning to go into culinary school in the fall. This is like the time to apply. And here's kind of how I think about it. The curriculum for the classes that you'll take, like the quality of the education that you're going to get, is more or less laid out. Like that's what you're paying for. You are going to go to the same classes, listen to the same instructors, you're going to get the same assignments as every single other person in that classroom. So to me, it's less about stressing about what am I going to learn at school, and it's more about what can you specifically take into your own hands during your time there. And that's why I push networking so hard. When you go to schools like this, you're surrounded by like-minded people, you have access to professionals that are your instructors, right? Or people at your school that can get you in touch with other people. And then when you ultimately make that ask to someone who feels kind of out of your league, you have the ultimate card, you have the student card. You can say, hey, I'm working on this paper for my fundamentals class, or I'm in Asia's class right now and we're learning all about dumplings and I wanted to kind of get your sense on what the current state of blank is. People are way more forgiving with students than they are with most other people who are just trying to do the standard pick your brain. And so I really push that, like what types of relationships can you foster, what types of connections can you make that will go beyond your education, because that's ultimately what's going to lead you to your first job, what are going to be your peers that you connect with down the road when you need a sous chef for your opening restaurant. And I think I see too many people kind of like burying themselves in the books and getting so stressed out with the classes themselves, when in reality there's so much more to the culinary school experience than just the classes. Man, there's a lot of Christopher questions today. I've never really been attracted to large restaurants or hotels, but a lot of people around me are telling me that that's the thing to do to succeed. I think I'm more into the small restaurants that aren't super high-end, but only maybe have 3 years experience cooking, so I can't make up my mind. Any advice for me? I'm just finishing up culinary school in BC. You need to make sure that the job that you take is at a place where you're excited about the food or the people or the techniques that they're using or the location that they're in. You need to make sure that there's a distinct why as to why you're going to show up to work every day. And I think if you can dig a little deeper into those hotels or larger restaurants and find the why of why people are recommending that to you, a la it's a higher salary, it's going to look better on your resume, there's more track to management positions, then maybe you can find value in these places and consider them as a place to spend your time. But I think if you value like more camaraderie with your coworkers, a flexible and more changing menu, possibly more interaction with the guests, then a smaller restaurant might float your boat a little bit more. Because let's play this out, right? You go to a place that has a higher reputation, they are more high-end, the chef is really well regarded, but you don't like the environment or you aren't excited about the food, your performance is going to go down. And then ultimately, if you decide to leave that place and go to the maybe smaller place, that person's not going to give you a good reference. So all that time that you spent is more or less wasted. And if you flip that, if you do a really stellar job at this really small place and you're so excited, you make your way into like a junior sous chef style position and you want to then go up to a higher end place because you see more of a career path there, you're gonna get a stellar reference and it's gonna be super easy to get that job. Kimbo Slice, tips for working in Michelin restaurants, just landed a job at a 1-star place and I have no prior fine dining experience. Congratulations. In those first kind of 1 to 3 months, the best thing you can do is learn what the standards of the restaurants are. How do people communicate with each other? How does the restaurant stay organized? Where do the recipes live? How do they put the produce away? What is the standard for, if you have 80 covers, how much more do you prep for? Because once you learn the rules of the game, then you can start to really play and learn. And as you start to learn, it's better to spend that time where you feel like you're a little bit slow learning the rules rather than going in an all-out sprint, but you're going in the wrong direction. You got this. Brian Smith asks, are American Culinary Federation certificates really valuable? Like, how many Michelin star chefs have certification in America? I ask myself this question a lot because in culinary school times, I always saw it as like, this is a valuable add-on. You can set yourself apart from other people by getting this certification. And in reality, from my experience, I found that it's actually more valuable if you are in the competition space or if you want to be a judge for things or, get these brand partnerships with places like Cisco or these larger wholesale operations. The process for getting certified is less important and relevant, in my opinion, to how current restaurants operate. It is more of a legacy thing, and I understand the value of it. I just don't think that it's like you're going to be a better Michelin star restaurant chef if you have this accreditation as opposed to someone who is just wildly creative and able to make things that people actually want. I don't actually know what that number is of the people who have Michelin stars and are also ACF certified. If you see value in it beyond just having something to put next to your email signature, I think you should do it. If not, it's hard for me to recommend. Sachin Mystery asks, I'm starting out my YouTube journey, filming and cooking videos. Do you have any tips and tricks to help me out with filming and editing, structure to videos, etc.? I think most of you know this, but I'm 100% self-taught with all my video editing and media production kind of things. I got a lot of value from travel vloggers, wedding filmmakers, and just people who, dissect camera gear basically for a living. I binge watched a ton of stuff, especially early on. I don't do it so much anymore because I have a reliable setup. I know how to use my equipment. I have more or less like a style that I know how I work with. But the best recommendation I can give you is like, do some tests on things that are outside of your comfort zone. If you're used to making like 3-minute fast-paced kind of jump cutty style videos, what does it feel like to do like an entirely talking head style video with B-roll overlaid on top of it? What does it feel like to make a video with no dialogue and it's just synced up with music, because that gets you used to pacing and how things flow and how long do you leave something sitting on a screen? What does it feel like to do something that has a voiceover on it? Like, you have to test yourself. If you set yourself a 15-minute video constraint, how do you construct that video? What goes into you making something like that? And then I think the biggest piece of advice that I give to people just starting off making videos is figure out what are your shows. So for me, it was Dish of the Day, it was like gear breakdown videos, and it was the Emulsion podcast. That's how I started off my journey. I knew that if I had an idea, it had to fall in one of these 3 buckets, and I knew what the structure of that looked like. I always start with what's up, folks. I always say have a good one. The Emulsion podcast always has like the intro, today's beverage, I talk about the things, then I do direct answer, then I do the non-industry story, and then I close things out. And it's not to say you can't make other things or do vlogs or anything like that, but I think giving yourself that structure makes it easier to pick up the camera because you know when I talk about X, it looks like Y. It also gives the people who are watching your videos a recognizable, consistent, I know what to expect kind of effect when you have a show, as opposed to like, oh, I just turn on the camera and it's different every single time. All right, that's gonna do it for the questions. Thank you so much for your caption this comments, as well as everybody who submitted their questions. I hope this provided some value. I hope everybody's staying safe out there. I hope you and yours are well. I really appreciate your attention as always. My name is Justin Khanna, and I hope you have a good one.